thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to sit here with Monica Tam from DoorDash. And before we start, we should actually, we should definitely give it up for DoorDash, because I actually spoke to a lot of the media owners, media partners prior to the event starting, and everybody talked about DoorDash's amazing support of the out-of-home industry, especially digital out-of-home industry during COVID, right, which hurt a lot of us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah, I mean, even for us as an agency, DoorDash and a couple of their clients really kept the lights on in a really difficult time. So that was really good. So we're glad to have you here. So why don't we start by, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about who you are, how you got to DoorDash, and what's happening at DoorDash now?
Yeah, for sure. So I currently have been at DoorDash for a little over a year. I lead our growth marketing, which really is just a fancy tech word for really getting new user acquisition to the platform for all of our international markets. So that includes Canada as well as Australia and New Zealand. It's our new marketplace launch there. And previous to that, I was at Maple Leaf Foods. So if you're a fan of hot dogs and bacon, that was me.
Who's not a fan of hot dogs
now
and
I'm in
bacon?
food delivery. So it's all the same. But it's actually a really exciting time to be at DoorDash. Of course, like there was a ton of growth for us in COVID, a ton of support for especially our local communities and the restaurant community when there was very limited options of who wants to cook again for the whole family that you're stuck with. But since then, I mean it in the most
that you're so
nicest
happy
way.
to be with,
Yeah,
right?
in the
Yeah,
nicest,
not that you're
most
stuck with.
endearing way. But actually, since then, it's been really exciting growth period for us, because really outside of food delivery, DoorDash is really all about how do we deliver the last mile delivery for all of your goods ultimately. And so outside of food, this also means grocery. So at the end of last year, we launched a partnership with the largest grocery retailer in Canada, Loblaw, and they operate across both pharmacy as well as grocery. And so being able to deliver that as another way of convenience for our consumers has been really important. We talk about, these new adjacencies as what we call new verticals. So outside of grocery, that includes convenience. Floral shops have been a big hit. So Mother's Day was an awesome time. Usually you're very used to seeing that long line on Mother's Day because people forgot their flowers. But you can even skip the line and actually just deliver right to someone's door. So that's been really easy. And then another element has also been our Dash Pass. So that's actually our subscription service to really get no delivery fees and being able to give more affordable options for everyday convenience. And so most recently, we just announced our partnership with Amazon Prime. So selfish plug here, but anyone that does have Amazon Prime, you actually can sign up for Dash Pass for 12 months free. And so that's a really great way to tackle the macro climate of people are looking for affordability when it comes to convenience, and there's no better way to do that than through Dash Pass.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's obviously huge partnerships with Loblaw and obviously Amazon Prime. And one of the things that we saw across multiple industries is consumers' behavior changed a lot during COVID, right? And, one of the things that people got a lot more accustomed to was getting groceries delivered, getting food delivered, because we didn't really have much of a choice. And so to see that trend continue on, even after COVID is quote unquote done, and having those partnerships is obviously smart and strategic from you guys. When you think about, DoorDash and the best ways to reach and engage with consumers through media, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, at DoorDash, we're very much like an underdog. I think that's our mentality because we are a challenger brand and we weren't the first to market in Canada. And so for us, I think that's really working across the full funnel. That includes really big awareness driving mediums. So that's really where out of home plays a big role. Really building the brand and building those positive sentiments with whether all sorts all sorts of delivery occasions. That includes like broadcast media, like audio, how we're showing up in contextual moments, especially with like tentpole occasions and like consumer moments throughout the year where delivery can be very top of mind. But then we also kind of balance it with conversion. So ultimately, DoorDash is an app. Digital like tracking is like highly important to us. Heard a lot of people talk about measurement. We're also a very data-driven company. So kind of pairing the awareness-driving channels with things like referrals, affiliates, paid social search, like those are all really important because ultimately, like in our roles, like especially with user acquisition, that consumer journey isn't linear. Like, you know, they might be seeing like an out of home and then they're like watching TV and then ultimately they might convert on like a Facebook ad. But it's never linear. So we really want to make sure that we're showing up across those multiple consumer touch points so that we can kind of really get at the different use cases.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And, you know, one of the things that DoorDash has done really, really well is the innovation on really trying to understand the consumers, the path to purchase. You know, I know a lot of the stuff that we've done is geofencing restaurant partners that you have and understanding who are the type of consumers that are going into those restaurants, where do they originate from, where do they, you know, come from, what does that path to purchase look like, what routes do they take, what time of day on those routes, and then you guys activating kind of along those journeys has been super, super cool. And the other thing that's great for you guys is just the amount of first-party data that you sit on, right? So you understand the transactions at the postal code level, you know, the frequency on how often people are ordering, and everything, you know, in between that. So that's super cool. So, you know, from your perspective, when you start to think about big campaigns and even campaigns that you've done in the past, how does out of home fit into the overall media mix when you're looking at everything?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start off with COVID that you brought up at the beginning. I think, especially digital out of home was a huge play for us. I think we needed to find mediums where we can quickly pivot of like how we show up for the local community. And it wasn't just, I think, the consumers, like, you know, there was definitely a lot of opportunity to convert and get people to try delivery for the first time. But it was also very much about showing up for our local merchants. It was a very challenging time for them. And so anything that we could do to really like lean in and help promote their offerings, and really encourage people to kind of rally behind the restaurant business to try delivery, because that was one of the limited options we had at that time, was super important. And digital out of home provided a really great vehicle to have the production, you know, low lift, like to be quick and nimble. And then I think really since then, there's been some things that we've really maintained. So on the merchant front, like you mentioned, like geofencing, like how we're able to support, you know, when we're doing like merchant campaigns and supporting our key enterprise partners, we have the ability to like geofence that promo messaging to the proximity of those stores so that we stay really top of mind. We're able to have like time-based messaging, so showing up in like office buildings now that we're going back to work, residential buildings, so that, you know, when you're thinking about lunch or dinner, like how do we show up in those moments? At airports, like how many of us have been like really hungry when we land and know there's nothing in our fridge and the last thing we want to do is cook. So like how do we really show up in those moments to be an aid to consumers so that we can be top of mind and like minimize that friction, I think has been really important. And then the last piece of that I would say is really out of home has a big role for us, I think, in more long-term growth metrics. So it's not always, you know, the most efficient. Like we talk a lot about efficiently growing, especially in a world where budgets are very constrained. But it's really important for us to balance that with the longer-term goals of like brand affinity and like building brand loyalty. And that really comes with like always staying top of mind.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys did such an amazing job during COVID. For any of those people who were out and about during COVID, obviously DoorDash was front and center. And you talk about, you know, being contextually relevant and being in the right place at the right time. And, you know, the elevator comment you made on, you know, obviously vertical impressions and Captivate, and Patterson's going to be very happy to hear that. And, you know, being relevant when people come off the plane and whatnot. And one of the things that was really impressive of what you guys did, you know, because COVID was so crazy and there were so many lockdowns and literally it changed by the day and very regionalized. But to be able to have that ability to be able to turn on and off your messages in different marketplaces, I think was a huge success. And I know you guys did a huge heavy up in Quebec and BC that was really, really successful. So thank you for that. When you start to think about now that we're out of COVID, obviously out of home still continues to be part of the media mix. Would you assume that it's going to continue to always have a role as part of the mix? And do you see any changes, any growth, any decrease, or will it stay the same? Any ideas on that?
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to still be part of the mix. I think like we've been very intentional also when we use out of home. So like when we're talking about new news, like new launches, that's a really great way to like drive excitement. I think the other way we've been thinking about out of home is just also like the different types of out of home and when it makes sense to like lean into certain mechanics versus others. So as an example, like summer season right upon us, we really want to take advantage of the heavier foot traffic. So like leveraging more of the wild, like, the guerrilla style wild postings is very top of mind because that's the perfect time to do that, as well as like large mural, like static placements. But especially as we go into winter and there's like more hours of the day where sadly it's like dark for like 6 months of the year.
You're not stuck at your house with your family.
With that digital out of home actually works really well because like, the lighting like just shows like our creative just shows up so much more impactfully.
It really pops when we see some of the examples here.
It just shows up so much better. And then the other thing, great example, transport hubs. Like, now that people are out and about, like how do we take those transport hubs and like, leverage a lot of like the takeovers. So we've done that with like Union Station. We do that at Dundas Square. Like we recently did one that you helped us with like Dave's Hot Chicken. When we did I hope there's a lot of fried chicken lovers out there, but we had, there's one really strong fan.
Free fried chicken delivered by DoorDash for you, Amanda.
But like leveraging those type of mechanics for like takeovers, dominations, I think is like where it's like really exciting. So again, I think it really comes down to what we've learned is it's all about context. And so if you can pair the right messaging with the right medium at the right time, it's more likely that we're going to grab a user's attention, and then more likely that we can actually convert them, or if they're an existing DoorDash user, to kind of keep us top of mind so that they place another order.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, in the essence of time here, I know we've got 2 minutes. I wanted to thank you for your innovation, the ideation that we have, obviously, between our teams, and then just your ongoing support of the out-of-home industry, which I know everybody's very happy with. So thank you very much for that. Barry, I don't know if there's any questions.
We have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Couple of questions. All right, we're going to go over there. Okay.
Oh, my God.
How, Monica, are you using real-time data? I think you kind of talked about that a little bit in terms of using real-time data. You talked about, putting up different ads, dynamic insertion. I like when you talked about the light at the end of the day. That was great. So why don't we go to the first one? How has your media mix changed since COVID? Which I think you touched on a little bit. Maybe you'd like to articulate that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in COVID, when we were all at home, I think we had to rely a lot more on digital channels because that was one of the limited ways in which we can get to people. So I would say we were probably a lot more heavy in conversion-based channels like paid search, paid social, and then also like things like digital out of home where we knew we had the flexibility to like change messaging because like who knows what the next announcement was going to be, and we constantly had to pivot. But now that I always use quotations, we're out of COVID.
Fingers crossed.
I think like it's about using different mediums of like out of home. So like being able to not just like have digital out of home, but how do we put that in parallel with static placements. Actually, recently, last quarter, we've started also doing advertising with Cineplex.
Cineplex.
So, like, knowing that people are back at the movies, there's a high correlation of entertainment lovers that over-index with, like, food delivery. So, again, like, really leveraging all of the audience insights that we have to show up where our consumers are most likely to be is going to evolve and has evolved since COVID.
You make some great points, and the flexibility of digital out-of-home and programmatic during COVID was really showcased our medium at that time. We were able to move schedules away from where people weren't to where people were, and I think it really highlighted the power of programmatic and digital out-of-home, so much so that it's been on a great roll since then.